Hello and welcome to the Duluth News Tribune's Bulldog Insider podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wellens, the Bulldogs hockey beat reporter at the News Tribune.
And I'm Zach Schneider, the television voice of UMD Hockey on My Nine Sports.
We've hit the holiday break of the 2024-2025 UMD hockey seasons. Players are taking their final exams this week. Coaches are all likely hitting the recruiting trails. Bruce Siski of KDAL is back with us this week, and we're going to wrap up the first half and maybe look ahead to the second as well, see what people should be expecting. We got together and took a look at things where they were after that first month, and we did that by sharing our thumbs up, thumbs down, and 3 stars. We're going to do that again. I thought that worked well. We're going to start with the women, because they've had the good start to
Ladies
the season.
first.
Let's be frank. We're going to start with the positive. The women, they're actually just past their halfway point of the schedule. We all like to say we're at the midway point, but the men are actually short of that yet. Women are past their halfway point. They've had a great start, guys. They're in a great position. The UMD women are second in the WCHA at the holidays. They lead the third place Gophers by a point. They're 3 points ahead of the fourth place Ohio State Buckeyes. If you're thinking UMD is going to contend for a league title, it's not going that well. The Badgers are running away with things right now. Nationally in the WCHA, they're 19-1 overall. They're 11 points up on UMD. I don't think that's happening, but 11-5-2, UMD's fourth in the human polls nationally. They're fourth in the pairwise ranking. And if the season ended today, they would be a number 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, hosting number 5 Colgate. I know usually I don't like to talk pairwise in December, but we are past the halfway point of the women's season. So for them, I think we can talk pairwise. Let's start with thumbs up for the women. I'll go first. Mine is, I'm calling it in December. I think they're a lock for the NCAA tournament at this point. It would have to be a pretty colossal collapse for them to fall out of the top, wherever that line's going to be right now, probably 8 or 9 if you get an upset somewhere, though Hockey East has a couple teams that are doing well. There's a little more balance, I think, in the pairwise this year right now than years past. What they're playing for right now in the second half is home ice in the quarterfinals. They want that top 4. They don't want to have to play that regional semifinal or the first round game, so they don't get into the predicament that they got into last year, which is playing a double overtime game to advance and then have to play a well-rested team in the next one. So that's my positive. That's my thumbs up. They have taken care of business, specifically against the bottom half of the league. They've taken 22 out of a possible 24 points in the WCHA against St. Cloud State and Minnesota. They got shootout wins over St. Cloud State and Minnesota State. They've swept Bemidji State. They've swept St. Thomas. They've been really good in non-conference play. That's my thumbs up for the women. They are taking care of business right now. Zach, what's your thumbs up for the women so far?
Yeah, I think that, right, the recipe for success, they followed, and they've actually done one better because they won those 2 games to start the year against Ohio State. So they've got a bird in the hand, so to speak, if they do stumble in the second half. Last year and in years prior, it's almost like you needed to be perfect down the stretch. They don't necessarily need to be perfect, but pretty good will do the trick. And if they are perfect, they'll be one of the top 4 seeds, probably, perfect being against the bottom half. I've thought the top 4D have been really good. The defense for UMD, we've talked about the goaltending with Ev Gasco, and we will again here shortly. But I really like their top 4D, Tova Henderson, Nina Job-Smith, and then Hannah Baskin and Ida Carlson. Those top 4 have played really well. And just in the last 6 games, it seems they found a top line. They've had obviously some injuries, which we'll talk about again. We talked about it last time we did this, but the Clara Van Wieren between the Olivias, Mobley and Wallin, has really popped over the last 6 games. They've combined for 23 points in those 6 games. They've combined for 13 goals. Those 3 seem to be really going the right direction as a top line. And when you get to the NCAA tournament, or when you play Wisconsin and Minnesota and Ohio State again in the regular season in the second half, those 3 need to produce. And that's where they kind of faltered maybe against the Badgers and the Gophers in the first half, is they didn't have that pop offensively. So I really like the emergence of what I think we can call right now their true scoring line.
Bruce, your thumbs up from the first half for the women.
I wanted to say because they beat Ohio State twice. I mean, that honestly, that's almost enough to be thumbs up for the first half. But I try to go a little deeper, and I think the way that they're creating offense from defense, and it's not just their defender, and they're getting goals. Tova Henderson, Ida Carlson contributing offensively. It's not just that; it's the way that they are transitioning pucks and they are turning defense quickly into offense. We saw Clara Van Weeren's winning goal against St. Cloud State. It was defense into offense, and obviously a longer shot than what you would expect to go in that situation. But the play starts in your zone, and you turn it into a goal. They've been doing that a lot here in the last month or so, and I think that is another recipe. We know they can grind teams down, and they can create offense from their forecheck. But creating offense off the rush, it's just another thing teams have to be mindful of. You do not want to feed UMD's transition game right now.
Our thumbs down for the women. Bruce, I'll let you start that one off.
Gopher weekend. I can excuse the 2 losses to Wisconsin. Wisconsin looks like they are far and away the best team in the country
at this point right now.
It is what it is. And I'm not even trying to disrespect the Gopher women, but those felt like games that they could have gotten. Especially the Saturday game. I thought they played pretty well, and they couldn't find a way to get the pucks home. But the Friday performance, and we had talked to Laura Schuler that week, and she said, puck management. And then I watched that game like they're not managing the puck. And reading your gamer that night, we were out in Ohio, and reading your gamer, I go back to the hotel, it was pretty clear she did not think they managed the puck. I felt that was a major missed opportunity for UMD. And it might not come back to haunt them in terms of making the NCAAs. I agree with you, Matt. I think they're a lock at this point. But where it might really haunt them is it might send them on the road. And right now they're at home. There's a lot of games left. If that series, if they can't go down and get some points at Ritter, that series at home that they had last month could come back to haunt them big time.
Zach, how about you?
Yeah, I think that right now the women's program is reestablished itself as, I think it was always the expectation, but they went through some years there where they weren't making the NCAA tournament field. And now it's expanded, and now they've reestablished themselves as really one of the top tier teams in the country. The question is, where do you fall in that top tier? And in the last couple of years, they've fallen near the bottom of that top tier. And with the 2 wins against Ohio State notwithstanding, you get beat by the Badgers, you get beat by the Gophers. Those are the kinds of teams, or maybe the exact teams, that you have to win to get over the hump, so to speak, for this team. And if they can get over that hump, now you've established yourself as a team that's contending for the national championship. Right now, it feels like they certainly have a shot, right? They're going to have a chip in a chair. They're going to have a spot at the table. But is it a realistic chance? Well, the time will tell with this team. Like, can you turn those opportunities into wins against the really bona fide programs in the country? So I think that's certainly valid. And then the forward depth, as much as I like the emergence of those top 3, you're playing the rest of the season on a very fine line. You have 11 healthy forwards. If they all stay healthy, things can go okay. One injury, depending on who it's to, but even one injury to Reese Logan or Zoe Kroc really could derail the season for UMD. So that's going to be a concern. And then that second line, I think, needs to come along. They have Caitlin Kramer between Mary Kate O'Brien and Danielle Bergen since those top 3 have been put together. And Caitlin Kramer, as good as she's been in the first half, she only has points in 5 of the 18 games. And so is she going to take another step in her freshman year and be a consistent contributor on the stat sheet? I think, we've asked Laura Schuler about Caitlin Kramer's game, and she's been doing other things that freshmen need to do to be successful at this level. And when Laura Schuler says that she's happy with Caitlin Kramer, I think the 3 of us have to listen to that, right? But they need some secondary scoring from their forwards. And so if that line can emerge and now you have 2 lines that can score consistently, then I'll feel better about playing a Wisconsin in an NCAA tournament setting where depth is going to be, depth and goaltending are really going to be the name of the game.
And if you might want to go back to Clara and the Olivias. We need to come up with a nickname for this line, by the way. I don't know what it would be, but there has Clarivia. I don't know. That sounds terrible.
Sounds like a prescription drug or something.
Do not take this if
I think that's one of the drugs I'm on, actually. The 20 that I'm on right now.
But it's the quintessential question for coaches, right? Like, you've got the second center in Caitlin Kramer, who's elite in a lot of things that she does. Do you break up that top line? Do you try to create the balance of having two really good lines when, for example, when Wisconsin comes calling in a month and change?
But that's what it was before, right? And
True.
so they had, I think it was Mobley on Kramer's line. I think the linchpin here is going to be, can Caitlin Kramer, she's so talented and we've seen glimpses of it. Can she find a way when teams are going to game plan against her when that line is on the ice? Because Mary-Kate O'Brien and Danielle Bergen are good players. They're doing probably better than expected offensively this year. Mary-Kate O'Brien, I think, has had a great start to her year, but they're not players that you game plan against. Caitlin Kramer is that player on that line. So the hope, I think, is that she becomes more of a consistent threat. But I think you have to leave those top three together, right? The way that they've gelled and they've scored. You need one really good line, and they've got that. And I just think that they need that second line to come along a little bit more.
And I will say this: your two biggest series in the second half are at home.
Yep.
It's always easier to load up one line when you're at home and you can control matchups.
Correct.
Yeah, and Bruce, that kind of leads into my thumbs down. Is it's similar. We mentioned it. Not beating the Gophers and Badgers, going 0-4 against them. The two wins against, I think they were going to get swept by the Badgers in Madison. They played them tough, but the Badgers are just so good right now. They're having such a strong start to the year. They've had a really good first half. It doesn't look like they're going to slow down. You would have liked to see them come out of then Ohio State and Minnesota 2-2, and they are, because they swept Ohio State and then lost the two games to Minnesota. That's a series they should have split. If they want to lock up that top four, like if you beat the bottom half, sweep Syracuse to start the new year, they'll be in the NCAA tournament. But if they want to be that host, either as a 3 or a 4, I don't know if they could even get up to a 2. If you can go and go 4-0 against Ohio State and Minnesota, that's asking a lot. Steal a win against Wisconsin. I'm not saying that's out of the picture either. They could move up even further. So then they're in that position, right? The top 3 teams, you're going to play a team that got to play 2 days ago. Hopefully it's a team that maybe had to play in overtime or 2 or 3, which we've seen in the women's tournament. We have seen a lot of overtime games in that first round. The initial Gabby Hughes dismantling of Harvard in the first round, it seems to be the exception, not the rule, for the women's NCAA tournament right now. They got to get some wins in the second half against their big 3 rivals in the league. They'll have to go to Ritter and beat the Gophers, which, hey, that's good practice, because they might have to go to Ritter in for the Frozen Four and beat the Gophers again. So, and then they get the Badgers and the Buckeyes in Duluth. So, our 3 stars for the women's to start the first half. Bruce, who do you have?
I went with Clara Van Leeuwen at number 1. She has scored some massive goals. She has also provided some leadership that you can't measure, both on and off the ice with this team. Ev Gascon, to me, was the clear number 2 then. She's been outstanding. I think she was asked to take on a little bit more with Haley McLeod transferring, and think she's done very well with that. And then I want Tova Henderson at number 3. She's popped some big goals. I think her pairing with Nina Jobe-Smith has been massive for UMD. They've been very, very good. And again, we talk about defense into offense. Tova Henderson's played a big role in that, and I think she deserves a nod here.
Zach, your 3 stars for the women.
Pretty similar. I think Van Weeren and Gascon are 1A and 1B to this question. I went with Gascon, a slight edge. She's got a 940 saves percentage, and that includes kind of getting shelled at Wisconsin. So without that game, it might be like 960 or something crazy. Like that. I didn't do the math, but it would probably be wrong anyway. But I mean,
Same.
It includes a kind of an outlier in her schedule, and her saves percentage is what? It's second in the
She's
WCHA.
I've guessed going 940, second in save percentage, fourth in the league in goals against average at 1.84. And you're right, take out the one game against Wisconsin where she got shelled, and she's probably number one because the goals against average is all pretty close too. She'd be near the top of the league in that. So.
You can't go wrong with her or Van Wieren in that spot right now, and they're going to need both of them to be really good down the stretch. I went with Olivia Mobley in the second spot, and she probably earned that in the last 6 games because since that top line's been together that I talked about, she's got 5 goals.
5 goals in 6 games for
She's
Mobley.
been really good, and they've been meaningful goals too, right? You know, and not to say like, you know, any goal is good, right? You know, but you know, Caitlin Kramer, 5 of her 12 points come in 1 game. Olivia Wallin scores 3 goals against was it Vermont or Bemidji State that she
Bemidji State,
that she got her hat trick. So yeah, you know, so Olivia Mobley, 1 goal, you know, per game. They've come at good times. She's scoring, you know, big time goals for the program late into this second half.
My 3 stars, pretty much the same here. I got Clara Van Wieren at number 1. Team high of 9 goals with Olivia Mobley. Team high in points at 18. 4 goals in the last 4 games for Clara. 7 points in her last 6 games. She's been really good. Ev Gascon, we've gone through her stats. She's my number 2 right now. And then Olivia Mobley, number 3. An honorable mention, I think, for all of us, probably Caitlin Kramer. The one thing that kept Kramer off this list for me is the penalty problems she's gotten into. She now second in the league in penalties. She was momentarily first in the league in penalty minutes, but the queen of penalties in the WCHA over her career, Abby Murphy, is back leading both of those categories. I feel like she saw that she wasn't on top one time, so probably threw in a slash or cross check or something in there to regain that spot. So time to break down the men's team. Just pause. Yeah. Just pause. Take it all in. They sit 8th in the 9-team NCHC. They are not in the NCAA tournament picture, and I think it's safe to say I don't anticipate them to be in the NCAA tournament picture at this point this year, unless they went and ran the table in the NCHC tournament. 5-10 overall, just 2-6 in the NCHC. They've been swept by North Dakota and Western at home. They got swept last weekend by Arizona State. Honestly, in a series, I thought they outplayed Arizona State, except on the scoreboard. Bruce, you've noted progress is being made. I wrote a column telling people to tamper their expectations of this team in the first half. I think it's safe to say at this point, things are not moving as quick as even the head coach, after talking to him on Saturday night, would like. So we're going to start with the thumbs down. I had written the returnees as my thumbs down, and maybe we can get into that. But my thumbs down is I'm going to say how slowly this progress is going. That progress, yes, is being made, but I don't think things are moving along at the pace. I'm not asking that they need to be like fast and quick and everything like that, but I don't feel like progress is being made at even a medium pace right now. I think it's just too slow. I want to toss this to you because you're the one that brought this up on social media, that it's obvious progress is being made, but I don't think it's being made quick enough. And some of that, for me, just my opinion, comes from talking to Scott Sandlin after both Friday and Saturday night's games. I'm
certainly not here to say that it's not is or is not being made quick enough. That is not for me to decide. The head coach clearly does not believe that it is. And I think it kind of goes back in a way to what you said in your initial thumbs down, the returnees. And I don't want to point fingers. I don't want to be that guy. But I go back and look at the line chart from Friday night. Arizona State's got like 4 graduates and a senior in their top 6 forwards. UMD has 3 freshmen, 4 freshmen, one and 1 sophomore in their top 6 forwards. What do you think's going to happen when those two teams meet? Let's just be honest about this. And I think there are some guys that more was expected of from day one, and we haven't seen it yet. I don't think any of those guys are freshmen. I think you look at, Max Plant just got back, and he might be the best player on this team already. I think it's arguable.
It's not arguable. He is.
He is the best player on the team.
So Zamplant's right there with him, freshman. Harper Benz didn't even play opening night. He was a healthy scratch opening night. And he is now, I would say, firmly entrenched as a top 6 forward. He's gone from not playing to the top 6 in 2 months. For a freshman, that's pretty impressive. You know, Anthony Mangini was healthy scratched the third weekend of the season, second or third.
It was early on, yeah.
He's now on the top line. He's a sophomore. I can't put this on those guys. I go and I look at, there's a lot of guys that haven't produced, and they don't have an FR by their name. So that's when I say progress is being made, I'm talking about these young guys. They dressed 10 freshmen on Friday night. You cannot argue that any of those 10 freshmen aren't significantly better players right now than they were on October 5th when the season opened up. That's progress. Now, has it taken the form of results? No, but I go back again. You're asking freshmen, a couple of them are 18 years old, to come in here and compete against 25-year-olds. They're going to need a little more help from their older guys. And that it was the case on opening night. It's still the case now. And until that gets remedied a little bit, we're going to continue to spin our wheels in terms of results.
Yeah, and I think we're starting to see some older guys. When I say the returnees as a thumb down, it's a combination of some of these guys are not, that group is not, when we see progress, I think we see a lot of the progress in the younger players, the freshmen. I think Anthony Mangini, I think got off to a slow start, had to find his role and find the right spot. I think he's in the right spot and has adapted to his role now. I think that's helped him. We've seen Harper Benz, we've seen the plants all evolve and kind of grow and such. I think Callum Arnott has settled into that fourth line role, but you start looking at guys that you want to take jumps, and they haven't. We're still waiting for Matthew Perkins. He's getting scoring chances, but can't finish to save his life right now. Still looking for his first goal of the season. Kyle Bettens, I think the time off, his healthy scratches helped him a little bit, but we're still not seeing the progress there. Dominic James, we saw him, I believe it was on Friday, try and take on 3 Sun Devils in the zone, didn't pass the puck and lost it, went the other way, and it ends up in the back of UMD's net. Like that's part of the problem when you don't get the results, is now you start seeing some of these guys lose patience and they start to do too much. And we're seeing some of that from the older guys. I think Joey Pierce for a while, the penalty trouble he was getting into, I think that was him feeling like he had to go beyond his game now and try and fire up the team by doing some, laying some hits and stuff that he shouldn't have. It's a lot of things. I think some players were not progress. Again, I think progress is being made with certain players. Others are not making the progress that they should at this point in their college careers.
You bring up Dom. You guys both watch enough football that I can lay this out here. Dominic James is Josh Allen. He is YOLO. And the difference is Josh Allen has learned when to YOLO and when not to YOLO. Dom, love the guy. He's yet to learn when to YOLO and when not to. And there was a play on Friday, and it didn't lead to a goal. They're on the power play, and he tried to split 2 guys in his own entry. And the puck went the other way for a shorthanded breakaway. That's YOLO. And I called it out at the time. I said, that's a YOLO play from Dom. And it in this case led to something that could have been very, very bad, because it was a game. I think it was 2-1 at the time. It was a hockey game. And that would have been a backbreaking goal to give up. Now, granted, they ended up getting a couple of more and building on that lead later in the game, but you didn't know they were going to do that at the time. That's the stuff that you have to find a way to curtail, and I get it. He's trying to find a way to make a play because he's frustrated. He wants those results. He wants to win games very badly, wants to leave this program better than he found it, and I still think he can do that, but it has to come. He has to take the game as it comes to him, and sometimes he forgets to do that, especially when he loses his patience.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? When guys aren't in right positions, whether it's because they, aren't thinking right, whether they're young and they haven't been in that position. The power play has changed, with injuries and non-production, and lines have changed a lot. And so guys like that are trying to make something happen. It's really hard to fault Dom overall this first half, just because of the effort that we've seen him give night in and night out on a team that this isn't what he came back for, right? He didn't come back to go 5-10 in the first half, had an opportunity to leave, wanted to come back and captain this team, and it hasn't gone the way that he wanted it to. And it's funny because whenever the team goes on the road, and you guys go with them on most of the trips, Bruce, you go with them on every trip. And so whenever I get a chance to watch them from afar, I try to get outside our headspace, right? The three of us watch the team with a certain perspective, I think, when we're working. And I try to get out of that when I get a chance to, and just watch it and see how I feel as somebody who's followed this program for a lot longer than I've worked professionally covering it. The results are all that matters to the fan base. We can sit here and have podcast after podcast and talk about the individual progress, which is evident if you watch the team. Scott has said it. If you watch the game, it wasn't a 5-1 game or a 4-2 game. It was a lot closer than that. Yeah, but that's what the score says. You're 5-10 at the break. 2 of those wins are against Stonehill. 2 of those wins are against Miami. 8 of your 10 losses are by 2 or more goals, and 9 times has the opponent scored 4 or more goals against you. I mean, just watching the games against Arizona State, you said it at the beginning, I thought, yeah, I mean, just watching on TV, UMD, I don't think played it, not by far not its worst games of the year, and maybe not its best games, but they certainly had a chance in both those games to be victorious, certainly on Saturday, and they weren't. And that is the problem that this community is having right now, is because individual progress isn't enough. If you were going through a season of ups and downs, I think that we would be having a lot of different conversation right now, but there's been very few ups in terms of results. It's like, okay, if you split with North Dakota, or you split with Western, or you split with Arizona State even, maybe you throw a sweep in there. Then, okay, now there's like some ups and downs, but it feels like it's half a step forward, like 4 steps back with this team in terms of the actual results. And then you get into the nuance of like, okay, well, Max is back. He's playing better. Adam Kleber's really good. Individually, there's some positives here, but overall as a team, this has been a really, really negative first half. And so if those results can follow some of the individual progress that we're talking about, not get into the NCAA tournament, not win the NCHC, right? Just see some results-driven progress in the second half, then I'll feel a lot better.
If you had asked me to lay out the worst-case scenario for this team in the first half, it not related at all to injuries, this would probably have been pretty close. Yeah. And the thing, like you mentioned, the 4 wins against Stonehill in Miami. The other ones against UMass Lowell was turned into a pretty doggone good team in the first half.
And if you had 1, 2, or 3 or more of those, then it would be a completely different conversation, right?
But you look at even that night, like the second period that night, they played great. The third period, they let their foot off the gas, and Adam Guyon is the only reason they won that game. Mm-hmm. How many other times have we been able to say that? And again, this is not about ripping individual players, but defense and goaltending, even as they have brought down, I think they have brought down significantly the quantity of chances that they're giving up. They haven't brought down the quality of the chances they're giving up, and they're not getting, as Scott says, key saves. They're just not.
And against Arizona State, the dagger was the moments. They just, at bad times, they were giving up. The coverage would break down, and they'd give up a bad goal. It was just like, for a while there, it was bad coverage giving up a lot of goals. I think we saw that in the Gopher series. Now it's the breakdowns are coming at the wrong moment. Scott often talks about, that big goal and that big save at the right moments. Don't need to make the big save throughout the game, but make it when we need it. The breakdowns for defensively are coming at bad moments. Just when you think UMD's taking over the momentum, they have a breakdown and give up a bad goal. And I think that's what's shaking their confidence right now.
Conversely, their big chances missed offensively also at bad times. So those two things combined, right? You know, it's not all on the defense.
The timing is not great.
There have been some forwards who have had a lot of net to shoot at in tie games, and either a big save's made, credit to the other goaltenders, or we've missed the net a lot too,
or the goalpost. They hit a bunch of those this weekend.
You score a couple of those at big times, and maybe a big save becomes a little bit less relevant. So it's on both ends too. I mean, they need to score big goals in big moments as well.
I remember there was one year where Dominic Toninato was struggling offensively, and he was not lighting the lamp at the rate he had been. And you know, you sit down with the coaches, and he's getting the chances. He's hitting goalposts, pucks are flubbing off his stick, whatever. They'll come. And, of course, they did. And so you do feel that way. But I remember talking to Cody Chupp last week, and he mentioned the Friday Western game. They had 27 shots in the house, that area right around the net, 2 goals. That's not going to get it done because the other team is going to find a way to keep you from getting those opportunities. And sure enough, the next night, Western Michigan did find a way to keep them from getting those opportunities. And the women's conversation, the lost opportunity against the Gophers, that was a lost opportunity against Western Michigan, a game that they 100% by any metric except the actual final score should have won. I would say the same thing about Saturday against Arizona State. 100% of the time you have to win that game. They didn't. They never led that game.
Yeah. And this program, the players and the coaches have always been really good, right? The line is we're not interested in the moral victories. Yeah. Well, you haven't had a lot of the real victories to this point. So you got to take the moral victories and turn them into wins in the second half, because I think everybody will come back, right? Everybody will come back, but those things that Bruce is talking about have to turn into the actual results at some point. And that's where I think, going back to your earlier point, Matt, it just hasn't happened fast as people expected, the three of us probably included in the first half.
Our thumbs up for the Bulldogs to start. There are positives. Right, guys?
Yeah.
Zach, I'll let you start.
Well, again, it comes on an individual level. I mean, you know, team-wise, group-wise, there's not a lot of thumbs up to give out. But, you know, the freshmen are their best players. And whether or not there's, you know, 1 or 2 older guys sprinkled in among the top, I think Dominic James is. But they're freshmen, the core of this team, what we expect to see over the next 2 or 3 years here in Duluth. They're really, really good. And we haven't even scratched the surface on Max Plant yet. He's only played not even 5 complete games in his collegiate career. But the freshmen account for 40% of the goals, 40% of the assists that UMD has to this point. And they're as talented a bunch, just as talented as we thought they would be coming in, but they're as talented a bunch as we've seen since that 17-18 title team and that freshman group that came in. So I'm really excited to see their growth. I think that when it clicks with this group, it'll click. You've seen flashes of it, and then now it's just a consistency factor. And if those 11 can kind of come together, it might not mean much the second half of this season, the way this is going. But, you know, if it can start to turn around and then you look forward to next year, I think that's reason for optimism for the program, if not for this season.
Bruce, what are your thumbs up from the first half?
Well, we'll start with the Plants. You know, Zam and Max played apart for 2 years, and then that season opener, it looked like they had been together the whole time. And then Max goes down for, a month and a half, comes back, and those two play again together like they have never spent a second apart, even though they have. They are dynamic. They're fun to watch. They're great kids. You know, Max is, again, the best player on this team. He's obvious at this point. And then the other thing I'll say is I think is we can fault the execution at times. The care factor is there. You know, even with the guys that maybe aren't producing or maybe haven't been as consistent as you want them to be, there is zero doubt the care factor is there with this group. And it starts at the top with your leadership. But you saw it in the Gopher game. That got out of hand quickly, and they didn't quit. The North Dakota game, that got out of hand. They didn't quit. And that only counts for a little bit. I understand that. But it does show you that they're going to keep coming. Again, largely led by these young guys, right? Like we saw it Saturday. Give up a goal, Max goes and scores. They take the lead back, Zam scores and set up by Aaron Pionk, another young guy. It'll happen. It'll come. And when it does, I do think it's sustainable. It's just, like you said, taking a little more time than maybe any of us thought it would, and it's making us want to pull our hair out sometimes.
So my thumbs up, and he's also going to be my number one star, so we can just transition right into there, is going to be Max Plant. 2 goals, 2 assists since returning for these final 4 games against Western and Arizona State before the holiday break. He has 2 goals and 4 assists in 5 games. He's the best player on the team. We've all said it. He makes others around him better. I still think Jason Shagabay's best game was that opener when he was playing with Zam and Max. And while Shagabay stayed with Zam for a while there, he's gone through some struggles finding himself. I would love in the second half to see Shagabay back with the Plant brothers, just because it was so much fun the first time. I'd like to see if they can recreate that magic, and maybe that lights a spark for Shagabay as well. Max just makes everyone around him better. We're seeing Max play better these last 4 games. Or we're seeing Zam play better alongside Max these last 4 games. Just, I think Max in these short games has been the MVP. My other 3 stars, I brought up the trying too hard and the turnovers that led to scoring chances, and in one case a goal against Arizona State. But Dominic James leading the team in scoring 9 goals, 17 points. I think he's been a tremendous leader for these guys right now. He stayed, off the ice. He stayed calm. He's been level-headed through these struggles. He's not blowing up and ripping teammates or getting frustrated at these young guys. And then my 3rd star, I'm throwing the backup goalies in there right now. And maybe this is recency bias. I thought Zach Sandy and Clayton Knapp, they gave the team a chance to win against Arizona State this weekend, both games. Knapp, I don't think Knapp was actually healthy to play on Saturday night. He was wearing a knee brace. He was limping around. He could barely walk after the game on Friday. But apparently he was the least injured to go out there and sit on the bench as an emergency backup on Saturday. I'm still curious if he would have actually went out there and played. I guess it would have depended how hurt Zach Sandy was. But Zach Sandy, we talk about like progress and making improvement, light years better on Saturday against Arizona State than what we saw in the season opener against Bemidji State. Adam Guyon has struggled at times in the first half. And that's another guy that even in games he's looked good, he hasn't gotten the results. They're still losing. I think Sandy and Knapp's play this weekend against Arizona State, Scott mentioned it, there's competition at that position right now. I don't think there was early on. That's going to make, hopefully, Adam Guyon better. And as someone asked last week, he can steal a game or 2. Zach, who are your 3 stars?
I flip-flop Dom and Max. Mainly, I think the separating factor for that was just availability, right? I mean, you play 4 3/4 games in the first half, or can you really be the MVP? I mean, Max has certainly shown his talent. So I put Dom up there at number 1. The only thing about Max that I hope we can see in the second half is I don't know how many times on the broadcast since he's been back, I've been saying one thing and in my head thinking, shoot the damn puck.
Yep,
I want him to shoot more.
I'm in that camp too.
And we both said that on Saturday. Actually, he depended on one another.
He puts himself in such good spots, and then he's such a pass first guy. And so if he starts shooting more, I'm really going to like his game in the second half.
And I do wonder how much. Sorry to interrupt, but how much of that is still recovering. He's not 100% right now. And
I don't know, that shot on Friday that he unleashed. I embedded it in the blog post of him going to the national junior team, and I almost think that shot maybe convinced someone to, we got to get him on there. That was a laser. It was such a quick. It was a beautiful shot. It's what this team needed.
Yes,
I want to see more of that from Max Plant.
But I wonder how much maybe he needed to do that to in his mind, I can do this still. And but then again, Saturday, he did make a couple of times he passed up shots. I'm like, no, go ahead and shoot that. It's okay.
Yeah, there's no question he's not 100% yet. But in the season opener, too, the pass that he made to Jason Shagabe against Bemidji State, I thought he overpassed that puck and it ended up as a goal. So I guess I trust Max Plant to make those decisions more so than me.
He's a smarter hockey player than you or I.
I think he is at this point. I mean, it's close, but I think I'll give it to Max. And then at number 3, I put Adam Kleber. I think he's the team's best defenseman at this point, just a half a season into his collegiate career. He's a big body. We've seen progress from him. He's probably going to be on that World Junior team. And I think the sky's the limit for him as he gets more and more comfortable at this level. But I think he's probably already elevated. That one is arguable too. I think you can make the case for a couple other guys, but I think I would give it to Adam Kleber being the team's best defenseman at this point.
Bruce, your 3 stars.
I went Max 1, Dom 2. Dom, if you're listening, first off, why would you? That's yourself. But secondly, less YOLO in the second half, please. I know that's part of you, but curtail it a little bit. And then I threw Harper Bentz a bone. I don't think third star is very clear here. So I threw Harper Bentz a bone. Healthy scratch game 1. I know he's only got 5 points, but he is around a lot of opportunities. And I am of the belief, he's a guy that will figure out how to start cashing those opportunities in. He got robbed blind by the Arizona State goalie Pavicic on Friday. He got robbed blind by the goalpost once on Saturday. It's coming for Harper Bentz. And I think, again, to go from healthy scratch October 5th to on the second line before Thanksgiving, he's doing pretty well for himself so far. And excited to see what happens for him in the second half of the year. I do think he's in the mix. You talk about maybe moving Shagabe back with the Plants. I think then you put Bentz with Dominic James and whoever else and see what happens, because he's proven here that he can handle the minutes.
All right. We are getting pressed for time. We did get a couple listener questions. Unfortunately, the 3 of us talked too long to get those in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to forward those questions to Bruce and Zach. We'll do, if the guys can get it up here, the Q&A, the Bulldog Insider Q&A this week on DuluthNewsTribune.com will be the answers to those questions. So there are a couple good questions, but they're going to add another hour to this podcast. At this point, I think if we start diving down some of these rabbit holes. So really good questions. We're going to get those answered in the Bulldog Insider Q&A this week. So Bruce, thanks for once again coming on, joining Zach. Legit wanted you on this time instead of honestly, when we did the 1 month.
We ran out of people to have on.
We ran out of people to try and call on. So
thanks and happy holidays to all the listeners.
Yeah, we are going to be back after New Year's. Wyatt and I are working on putting on like a best of from the first half. So if you missed Gabby Krause talking about crimes, like that's when I think of our best moments so far from the first half. I got to check with the lawyers, but I think we're going to bring that part back.
It's got to be up there, yeah.
Yeah, first half. So we're going to do a best of that we'll put out there in case you haven't had a chance to listen to all the episodes and you don't have time to get through them. We'll get the highlights from this first half. And one of these days, maybe in the off season, Wyatt and I are going to do a best of from this podcast. Probably just one dedicated to Irma, Alberta, the best of Irma, Alberta, and then we'll do some other ones. So the Bulldog Insider podcast, don't want to wait for those best ofs. You can find all of our episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Like us, subscribe, and rate us. For more Bulldogs hockey coverage, visit DuluthNewsTribune.com/Bulldog Insider. Subscribe to gain access to all of our coverage all season long. And thanks to all of you for listening. Happy holidays. We'll catch you after New Year's.